Hi, I'm Michael Lang with Nextlevel Academy. Welcome to the C# Getting Started Guide on building your first console application. So today we're going to start by building a project in Visual Studio 2019. You can use the Community Edition or the Pro Edition. And we're going to see what comes with that default project. We're going to try to step through it and see how it works, why it works, and make some changes and go from there. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's look over at our screen here. I'm going to start at Visual Studio, and you'll be prompted first of all by a dialog that asks you what kind of project you want to create. It might load a project for you if you've already been in a project. When you load it up, it might just start to the last project you'd open. But if you close that project out, it will show this dialog so you can start a new one. You could also use the file menu to start a new project. So I'm going to click on this button here for create a new project. I've got some recent templates, and Console App is convenient here for that. But if you don't have that there, you can type console in the search window at the top, and it'll filter the list of projects by what you have installed based on what features you've selected when you install Visual Studio. I'm going to pick a console app with .NET Core. So .NET Core is the newer .NET. .NET Framework is a little older. They will be evolving and merging them together soon. With .NET 5 will be a combination of .NET Core and .NET Framework, but for now, .NET Core is newest. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to select Next. And now we need to pick a name. The first thing I'm going to do is pick my development folder where I always put my projects. You want to make sure you do not make this a Dropbox folder or any other file sharing service that synchronizes your hard drive to the cloud. You don't want to use any of those for your code folders that you do your projects in. Because when you do builds and other things, it'll do a lot of synchronization of files, and you'll just find there's a lot of back and forth going on, and sometimes it could cause issues with Visual Studio if it syncs something down from the file service that it thought it changed, and there could be some problems. So let's try not to do that. You're going to be using Git most likely for any source control project, so it'll be backed up to Git. You don't need to include it in your file share serving backup. So C:\dev for me, I'm just going to call this console demo 4 and click the create button. And it'll just take a few moments. It'll create the project. And here we go. So Visual Studio is now open. It does show the one file that's in here. There's only one file that comes with this project, one code file. If you look here in the Solution Explorer, this is one of the windows that you have available to you. It might not be open because it might be unpinned. So you can just click on it and you can pin it to keep it open. If it was not open at all and it wasn't on the side nav, it could have just been previously closed. So you just go to the View menu. You can pick Solution Explorer from there to open up that window. And then you could dock it. Alright, so you could also resize this window as needed. Alright, so at the top we have a solution. A lot of times you'll have more than one project in a solution. In our case here for this demo, we're just going to have the one project. So at this next level is our project level. It has an icon here to indicate what kind of project it is. You can see it's got kind of a double frame around it. That's kind of to represent a terminal or a console application. If it was a web project, it'd have a globe on there to represent the web, and other project types have other icons. So within the project, there's some dependencies. This is just other things from the framework that we want to pull in to use within this project. Right now, it's just using .NET Core as a base framework. There could be other packages with other features we want to add. We could select here and select Manage Nuget Packages. And there's all sorts of things here that you can add to your project. It usually comes up on the Installed tab, which will show nothing available to install. So you click on Browse to see what packages are available to install. You just pick one, click Install, and then those capabilities will be in your project. We don't happen to need anything in our project, so I'm not going to add one of those. Alright, so in addition to that, we have the program CS. This is the entry point of our application. Every application will need an entry point function that runs when someone starts up the app. In the case of a web MVC project and in the case of a console application, they both have this class program with a static void main in it. And when we get to our next course on ASP.NET Core Fundamentals, we will see how that differs in a web project. For now, we have the static void main, and it's whatever code we want to show up in the terminal at this point. So when we run this application, we're going to see this code run. So I'll go ahead and do that. There's a couple ways you could do it. First of all, there is on the debug menu, there is start debugging and start without debugging. Start without debugging is a little faster to get going, but start debugging will let you kind of inspect the internals of the application as it runs and check things out. There's also this green arrow in the toolbar. So I could either just click that will start it with debugging. So if you want to start without debugging, you have to use the menu or this shortcut key that's right here, to Control F5. You might have different key bindings on your installation, so you just check on the side of the menu and what it is for your installation. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit this run button and we'll see what happens. We're going to see the console open up. It wrote something and it's going to say press any key to close the window. It has completed running. You can see here it outputted hello world, and that is in our static void main to write out the phrase hello world. You also see something here to automatically close the console and debugging stops, enable this. So it could just close out automatically. They've added this as a convenience because usually in prior versions of .NET Framework, at this point the application is over, so it would just close the terminal. And so people thought, oh, it didn't open my terminal. But it's just that it came up so fast, it was done running, so it closed. In this current version, I currently have .NET Framework 3.1 installed, .NET Core 3.1. So it's got this now added to it. So if I press the key, the application is now finished running and is closed. So you can also do something called debug your application to kind of see what is going on, to inspect it. How you do that is you click in this little gray area to the side within a given code file. It'll add this red circle. You just got to make sure you click far enough over into this gray area. It's not in this white area to the side, not on the number or anywhere else in the line. It's got to be in this gray vertical bar to the side. That will also light the color of code in red, just to show that that is a line that's going to have a breakpoint on it. So a breakpoint is just a point within the application code flow in which it'll break, not break as in stop functioning, but break as in pause the application so you can check things out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit run with debugging. And if we look at the terminal, it will show there's nothing in it. It hasn't written any output yet. But this line of code that has the debugging statement on it now is now in yellow. And it's got a little yellow arrow. So it shows this is the current line of code that is being inspected as the application is running. So we can inspect args. There currently are none. No arguments were passed into this command line to open up this application. We don't have any variables at this point, so there's nothing to inspect, but we can pause it. We could check some things out if we wanted to, and then we can go ahead and hit continue to let the application continue running. So if we switch over to that, we're at the same point again. All right, so let's go ahead and add some code to this. Let's declare a variable. So I'm going to declare a variable called x. I'm going to set it equal to 5. And then how about we do another variable that is reading what the user has entered. So our name equals console. Console object is how you interact with this console window as the application is running that we saw that said hello world in it. There's a couple options in here. There's write line and there's read line. There's also read key or just read. The difference here is that read will just read one character and then it'll consider that it has read something and it'll go and continue executing and only let them enter one character. Read line will let them enter as much as they want, and as soon as they hit enter, it'll stop reading what they enter and continue executing the application. It's really the only difference. On write, write will just write out characters on a given line but won't advance to the next line. So you could do a console write, another console write, another console write, and they'll all be on the same line. As soon as you do a console write line, it'll go to the next line and you could write more stuff on the next lines. So I'm going to do a read, just read one character, Maybe I should actually do a read line. Alrighty. So I should probably also prompt them ahead of time that that we want them to enter a name. Let me show you why here. So I'm going to run the application. We're going to see it's just sitting here. There's a flashing cursor. It didn't hit our breakpoint yet, so it hasn't executed that line of code, so it's stuck somewhere up here. If I see here, if I enter something, it's letting me type, and as soon as I enter, now it has moved down to the next line of code. All right, and if I inspect here, name, that is what I typed in that terminal window. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that, and I'm going to do another bit of feedback to the user that says, enter your name. Maybe I should just make this a write so that their name goes on the same line. And I'm going to write, enter your name. All right. And I will put another breakpoint on here and start the application. Okay, so it is hit this line of code. If I switch over to the console, there's nothing in it yet. I'm going to step over this line. There's more buttons here at the top in this toolbar. There's a step into, step over, and step out. Step over is what we want to do in this case. So if we switch over to the console, it has output, enter your name, and there's a flashing cursor there waiting. It's not actually going to take user input yet because it hasn't prompted for read line, so I'm going to step over that line. Notice it didn't go to the next line of code in the debugger because it is hung on that line of code. It's waiting for user input in the application before the code will continue executing. So I'm just going to enter a name, hit enter, and now the code is going to continue executing. It's now on the next line of code. If I hover over this word name, it's going to show here in the debugger that name has a value of Mike. That is what I entered. If there was a bigger value, I could hit that hourglass or that magnifying glass and see a longer value. There's also other windows down here you can look at. There's this locals window. Locals will show every variable that's in scope of where the code is currently paused. So within here, we see I got an X, I've got a name, I've got args, and those things are all here. Args, X, and name. Alrighty, and if I want to, I can just go ahead and hit continue, or I can hit step over. There's no other code after this one, so step over is just going to go to the end here, and then there's nothing left. So that also just exits. It shows here any key to close the window. So there we go. All right, so that's it on what it takes to build a console application and debug it. The point of this lesson was just to show you how do you debug an application, how do you start a console application. In our next videos in the series and our next lessons in the courseware, we're going to show you more about how to use read line, write, and write line a little bit more depth. You can also check out our other lessons on string concatenation and other things to make your application more complicated, more involved, more featureful. So check out the next lesson to dig deeper.